A man is shot and killed by federal agents in Minneapolis. The official report claims it was self-defense. But bystander video? Well, that tells a completely different story. This is a fast-moving case with two competing versions of the truth, and we're going to break down the evidence for each one.
So what exactly happened here? On January 24, 2026, Alex Pretti was shot and killed by U.S. Border Patrol agents. The Department of Homeland Security immediately came out and said an agent fired to protect their own life. But then, viral videos started popping up, and they seemed to show something else entirely. So who was the man at the center of this whole storm?
Well, Alex Jeffrey Pretti was a 37-year-old ICU nurse, caring for veterans at the Minneapolis VA hospital. He was a union member, a lawful gun owner with a permit to carry, and had no serious criminal history. Friends and family described him as kind-hearted, and here's a key detail. He'd also recently been part of protests against another fatal shooting by federal agents in the city.
Okay, so that brings us to the encounter itself. And this is where the official story and the video evidence just diverge, dramatically.
I mean, the two accounts of what went down couldn't be more different. The federal government claims Pretti approached officers with a 9mm handgun and got violent when they tried to disarm him. But then, you look at multiple videos and sworn witness declarations, and they tell another story entirely. That Pretti was holding a cell phone, that he stepped in to help a woman who had been pushed over, and was then pepper-sprayed, tackled by about 6 agents, and shot while he was on the ground.
To really understand how this all happened, we kind of have to zoom out. Pretti's death didn't just happen in a vacuum. It was the climax of an incredibly tense month in Minneapolis, all happening during a federal crackdown they were calling Operation Metro Surge. It was an initiative aimed at fighting violent crime alongside local law enforcement.
You have to understand, the city was already on edge, big time. On January 7th, federal agents had killed another U.S. citizen, Renee Good, which set off massive protests. Then, just a week later, an immigration officer shot and wounded a Venezuelan man. So, Alex Pretti's killing? That was the third shooting by federal agents in the city in less than 3 weeks.
So with two completely different narratives, the only way to sort through this is to look at the evidence each side presented. Let's break it all down.
Okay, this was the official story, and it came out just hours after the shooting. The U.S. Border Patrol commander, Gregory Bovino, painted a picture of Pretti as a violent aggressor who was intent on killing officers. And that narrative was immediately echoed by top administration officials, who pretty much labeled Pretti a domestic terrorist right out of the gate.
But just as officials were making all these claims, videos from bystanders were going viral, and they appeared to show a very, very different sequence of events. So the question is, what was actually on them?
This is where that official story really starts to unravel for a lot of people. When you look at frame-by-frame analyses of multiple videos, they show Pretti holding a cell phone. He moves to help a woman and is then just swarmed by agents. Now get this, while they're all on the ground, one agent is seen reaching into the scuffle and pulling a handgun away from Pretti. And here's the kicker, it's less than a second after that gun is removed that another agent begins firing. In total, at least 10 shots were fired in about 5 seconds, all while Pretti was pinned to the ground.
And it wasn't just the videos. A witness at the scene provided a sworn declaration in federal court, and they stated, flat out, that Pretti approached for the camera, not a gun, and was simply trying to help someone who'd been knocked down.
As you can probably imagine, the release of this evidence, which directly contradicted the official narrative, set off a political and legal firestorm that went far beyond just Minneapolis.
The reaction from local and state officials was immediate and, honestly, unprecedented. The county attorney sued the federal government to preserve evidence. A federal judge granted a restraining order against the Department of Homeland Security, and crucially, Minnesota's own state investigators reported that federal agents physically blocked them from accessing the crime scene, even though they had a search warrant signed by a judge. Think about that for a second.
From the administration, the response was to blame local officials and protesters. Vice President J.D. Vance accused local authorities of working with agitators to create chaos and put federal agents in danger.
And then, in a really sharp counter-response, you have former President Obama and the First Lady releasing a statement calling the events an assault on the nation's core values. This just shows you how quickly this one shooting became a massive flashpoint in a much larger national debate. Amidst all this noise and all this back and forth, the Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara provided a piece of context that just cut through everything. And it all came down to this one single powerful number: 0. That was the number of people shot by the Minneapolis Police Department in the entire previous year.
And that's despite seizing nearly 1,000 guns and making hundreds of violent crime arrests. So in contrast, you have federal agents who had shot 3 people, killing 2 of them in under 3 weeks. You can see why people were so frustrated.
And that frustration really gets to the heart of the matter. This isn't just about conflicting stories anymore. It's about a fundamental breakdown in trust and procedure. And it raises a much bigger question about accountability when the investigators and the people being investigated are one and the same.
You see, according to legal experts, a proper homicide investigation follows a strict, non-negotiable protocol. You secure the scene. You document everything exactly where it was found. You establish a clear chain of custody for every single item, and you preserve all the forensic evidence. This whole process is designed to ensure the integrity of the investigation, no matter where it leads.
But that's not what reportedly happened here. Not even close. State investigators with a warrant were denied access. The key piece of evidence, Pretti's handgun, appeared in an official photo on a car seat, which suggested it had been moved. And potential witnesses were reportedly detained and transported away from the scene by the very federal agents who were involved. And when you zoom out even further, you see something really crucial about the federal approach. Analysis of their own law enforcement training materials shows a mindset where officer safety is absolutely paramount. One lesson explicitly states that using minimal force first could create unnecessary risk for the officer, and that deadly force can be initiated immediately. De-escalation just isn't the priority.
Which brings us right back to our central, unresolved question. In a case like this, with conflicting evidence, with jurisdictional disputes, and with a federal agency investigating its own agents' use of deadly force, how can the public ever trust that a full, unbiased, and transparent investigation is even possible? And that's the question that Minneapolis, and really the entire country, is asking right now.